يشبه الله البشر كلا وليس له صور لا يشبه الله البشر كلا وليس له صور وليس جسما فالحذر سبحانه رب عظيم وليس جسما فالحذر سبحانه رب عظيم سبحانه رب عظيم.
الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وأصحابه الطيبين الطاهرين. اللهم لا سهل إلا ما جعلته سهلا وأنت تجعل الحزن إذا شئت سهلا. اللهم ارزقنا الإخلاص في القول والعمل والنية. اللهم علمنا علما نافعا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما. وأسأل الله سبحانه وتعالى أن يرزقنا حسن النية وحسن الختام. May Allah give us the sincere intentions and the good ending. Ameen. So, inshallah, we're going to start the first chapter of the book. Last week we finished the introduction. And really this is the first, so the first half of the book, which is al-Ashʿariyyah in the East. And under that comes the most important political events in the East from the time of al-Khulafa al-Rashidun, the rightly guided caliphs, until the end of the 4th Hijriyy century. So the geographical expanse, and we're on page 51, the geographical expanse, meaning area, where the events we are investigating took place, is vast and extensive. Islam spread from China in the east to the Islamic West, and to Morocco, since the 1st century, since the 1st Hijriyy century. So the religion expanded out from the Arabian Peninsula as far as China in the east, all the way to the Atlantic Ocean in the west. This vast or great vessel contained the Muslim Ummah, the Muslim nation, and within it, the conquerors spread, teaching the creed that the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam and his noble companions followed in righteousness until the Day of Judgment. So not only did Islam spread by conquest, but also the creed of the Muslims spread along with that conquest. Ibn Idari, who is a historian, mentions regarding the border or the boundary of the Maghrib, the West, the Islamic West. It extends from the bank of the Nile at Alexandria, al-Iskandariya, which borders the Maghrib lands, to the furthest point of the Maghrib lands, with its boundary being the city of Salah, and it divides into sections. And as we mentioned previously, generally, we divided the Maghrib, the Islamic West, into the Near West, Al-Adna, the Middle, Al-Awsat, and the Far Maghrib, Al-Aqsa, as well as al-Andalus. The term Islamic West includes, in addition to what Ibn Idari mentioned, the lands of al-Andalus, yani Islamic or Muslim Spain. This region witnessed political fluctuations that succeeded one another from country to country, and its influences followed one another according to circumstances that historians have strived to explain their causes and results. So, as we mentioned previously, the Muslim Ummah, the Islamic State, at that time was internally borderless. There was no border between Morocco and Algeria. There was no border between Libya and Egypt. There was no border between Asham and Iraq, or between Al-Hijaz and Yemen. So there was free movement within the Islamic lands, and that lent to whatever affected one part easily affected another part. Movements that sprung up in one place, their influence would flow across these open borders internally from one end of the Islamic State to the other. So what the Islamic world in both East and West represents a historical unity, despite the vast differences separating its countries. Culturally, for example, the cultural differences. What concerns us is to shed light on the important events that occurred in the Islamic East and West, which influenced the emergence and spread of the Ashďariyyah, beginning with the events of the first Caliphate, Khilafah, and the accounts of the Umayyads and Abbasids, without overlooking that our topic centers around the 5th and 6th centuries Hijriyy, which is the 11th and 12th centuries of the Common Era. So in order to accurately understand what Ash'ariyism is, what it means to be an Ash'ari, what is the methodology, the school of the Asha'ira, it helps to understand the environment in which it developed. And in our case, we want to start at the time of the rightfully guided caliphs, and then move forward and cover some of these important political events, which were the backdrop in which, or the backdrop behind, or the backdrop of the era in which the Ash'ari school was formed. And to give you an idea the importance of understanding these things. I was this week browsing or musing on X or Twitter. So there are some people who made their way into my feed who are opponents of the Ashәрiyy. And some of the things that they will mention are the exact things that are covered in this book. That the people, the Malikiyya, the people of Northwest Africa, they're only Ash'aris because Ibn Tumar forced them. He waged war against Ahl Sunnah, and he took his part Shi'ism, yani Tashayyuʼ, and part I'tizal, Mu'taziliism, blended this together and forced it upon the people who previously were Ash'ariyy. And all of that is complete ignorance of what occurred during that time. And it is a complete lack of understanding of who's who among the great scholars of that era. And it is no wonder that such people ignore and overlook the connection between the Ash'ariyy of the Muwahhidun to the Ash'ariyy of the Murabitun, to the Ash'ariyy before the Murabitun, all the way to Al-Qadi Abu Bakr al-Baqillani, and then to Al-Imam Abu al-Hasan al-Ash'ariyy himself. Because these opponents of the Ash'ariyy, namely the so-called Salafis, they don't have chains of narration. They don't have an authentic connection between themselves and the Salaf. They have no authenticity in what they claim. Therefore, it is no wonder that they will just say Ibn Tumar appeared and he just forced the people to become Ash'ariyy. And the Murabitun were not upon that. The Murabitun, yani I'm getting ahead of myself, but I want to prove a point and to emphasize that this is not merely an academic subject. The Murabitun were started by Abdullah ibn Yasin and Ibrahim ibn Yahya. Ibrahim ibn Yahya, he is the one who had the idea of the Murabitun. He was the political force behind it. What inspired him to that? It was Abu Imran al-Fasi, the student of Al-Qadi Abu Bakr al-Baqillani, who was the Shaykh in Qayrawan. The religious force behind the Murabitun was Abdullah ibn Yasin. Where did his religious authority, knowledge, authenticity come from? It came from Al-Wajjaj, who was a student of Abu Imran al-Fasi. And Abu Imran al-Fasi was a student of who? Al-Baqillani. He was also a student of Imam Abu al-Hasan al-Qadisi. who was a student as well, who was a student of Al-Imam Ibn Abi Zayd al-Qayrawani. All of them Ashā'irah. All of them Ashā'irah. The roots of the Murabitun is Ashďariyyah. It's Ashďariyyah. The roots of the Murabitun is Ashďariyyah. The Ashā'irah existed in the Islamic West before the Murabitun. They are the ones who started the Murabitun. So it was not the case that Ibn Tumar forced Ash'ariyism upon the people of the Islamic West. It's far from the truth. So Islam has connected the East and West of the Islamic world. And this relationship was distinguished by scholarly connections that had the greatest impact in strengthening the bonds between the members of one ummah with far-reaching borders. The East was the focus of attention for Islamic Western scholars who became famous for their scholarly journeys to learn from the scholars who had learned from the successors, yani the tabi'un, who in turn had learned from the companions. One obvious name is Imam Sahnun, radiyallahu anhu, which inshallah we'll talk more about him. Yahya ibn Yahya, who is, which also we'll cover some of his biography as well. Al-Imam Malik radiyallahu anhu, his most famous book is Al-Muwatta. Al-Muwatta has different narration. Which is the most famous narration of Al-Muwatta? The narration of Yahya ibn Yahya, who is from where? Al-Andalus. Al-Andalus. It is the place, not Al-Andalus, but the East, is the place where the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was sent in Mecca al-Mukarramah, the heart of the Arabian Peninsula, and from which the expeditions and conquest launched from the capital of the Caliphate in Medina al-Munawwarah, or al-Madinatul Munawwarah. Thus uniting the Arabian Peninsula in one state upon which the glorious conquests were based, in which the companions and successors participated. Therefore, the Islamic religion spread to all regions. The conquest of Egypt was launched from Al-Madinah. The conquest of Asham was launched from Al-Madinah. Yani from Egypt, the Muslims went west. From Asham, they went north and northeast into like Azerbaijan and into the Asian Minor. The conquest of al-Iraq and Bilad al-Faris, the Persian lands, and Khurasan, they were launched from Al-Madinah and then eastward. After the state of the rightly guided caliphs, the east remained where the center of the caliphate was located, in Damascus, during the Umayyad era, and then in Baghdad during the Abbasid era. That was accompanied by political developments, including the emergence of various groups claiming adherence to this true religion, internal revolutions, and separatist movements from the Caliphate state to conflicting external or confronting external enemies, from European Crusaders to Mongols in their invasion and occupation of these lands, and then their expulsion from them, along with all the characteristics and features that distinguish the different countries and regions. Regarding this, Ibn Khaldun says in the introduction of his famous book, al-Ibar, his famous history, he said the caliphs inherited this title of Amir al-Mu'minin, commander of the faithful, and made it a tradition for whoever rules over the Hijaz, the Levant, and Asham, and Iraq, which are the lands of the Arabs and sinners of the state, people of the faith and conquest. So the center of the Islamic state, the Islamic empire, which stretched to China in the east and to Morocco, or the Atlantic Ocean, in the west. Its center was the land of the Arabs, Al-Hijaz, as well as Yemen and Asham and Iraq. In the east, and before I continue regarding Ibn Khaldun, his title was Waliyuddin. He was a chief judge. His kunya was Abu Zayd. His name was Abdurrahman ibn Muhammad ibn Muhammad ibn Muhammad al-Hadrami, famous by Ibn Khaldun. So originally, Ibn Khaldun was from Hadramaut, Yemen. He excelled in literature and writing and held the position of secretary in Fez. Then he entered Cairo and was appointed to the position of Sheikh of the Baybarsiyah and the judgeship of the Malikiyah. So he was a Maliki Qadi. He composed the great history and was knowledgeable, and he was not knowledgeable in distinguishing authentic hadith from weak ones. So he denied the hadith about al-Mahdi. And this is a mistake. This is a mistake on his part. He thought that these hadith were not authentic. And this is a mistake on his part. It is not a valid opinion. He died in the year 808 after al-Hijrah. And this is some of what al-Imam as-Suyuti said about him in his book Husn al-Muhadara, which is a very nice book and has a lot of beneficial information in it. So, in the East, scholars and independent jurists of schools of thought spread. Yani mujtahidun. Both those that became extinct and remain until today. So during this period of time, the Hanafi school spread, the school of al-Awza'i spread, the school of Sufyan al-Thawri spread. The madhab of Sufyan radiallahu anhu is now extinct. The madhab of Imam al-Awza'i radiallahu anhu is also extinct. Those that remain are the four that we know: the Hanafi madhab, the Shafi'i madhab, the Maliki madhab, and the madhab of Imam Ahmad radiyallahu anhum ajma'in. There also spread the people of sects, firaq, that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam warned against, and therein occurred various debates with continuous movement and the ongoing struggle between truth and falsehood. So from that time of the spread of Islam and Islamic conquest from the Arab lands, deviant groups spread as well until today. And since that time, the people of truth have struggled and strived against such people and against such ideas. The researcher of political conditions in the 5th and 6th centuries, Hijriyy, finds himself compelled to comprehend the conditions of the Islamic world in general and the conditions of the Abbasid Caliphate and the Ubaydiyyun state in particular. That enables him to understand the circumstances that contributed to the spread of the Ashәрiyy creed, its influence, and its victory in both East and West. In the East, weakness began to creep into the joints of the Abbasid Caliphate state, which lost its prestige in its second era, an era of decline as described by historians. Thus emerged the Batini movements, the Batiniyya, and separatist emirates that ate away at the body of the Caliphate state until the Abbasid Caliph had no power or strength left except at the center of the Caliphate and its surroundings, meaning Baghdad. He had no power except in Baghdad. He practically was relegated to being a mayor of a single city and its surroundings. Even in Baghdad itself, the Friday sermon, Khutbatul Jumu'ah, was delivered in the name of the Ubaidi Caliph for about 40 weeks, while the Caliph Al-Qa'im, Al-Abbasi himself, was under detention, or as they say in our days, under house arrest, when al-Basasiri took control of Baghdad and several cities in Iraq. This man, inshallah, towards the end of this chapter, we'll speak more about him. Arslan al-Basasiri, who is not Alp Arslan. It's a different person. Alp Arslan is among the Seljuks and among the great sultans of the Muslims. This person is from He was a commander of Banu Buwayh, which we'll speak more about. In the West, the proponents of the Ubaydiyyun call worked to destroy the last strongholds of the Abbasid Caliphate in Africa under the rule of the Ghaliba, which we spoke about last week. They established a state whose authority reached Tangier in the west, gained control of the middle and near Maghrib, and then took control of Egypt. As Ibn Khaldun says, the total duration of what this state ruled was 270 years. He mentions the emergence of the Ubaydiyyun. Remember, the Ubaydiyyun and the so-called Fatimiyya, they call themselves Fatimiyya. They are one and the same group. So he, meaning Ibn Khaldun, he mentions the emergence of the Ubaydiyyun movement, which was initially led by Abu Abdullah al-Shi'i, who we mentioned previously, and paved the way for the coming of Ubaydullah, who claimed to be the Mahdi, eventually leading to their establishment of authority over Egypt. Now, Abu Abdullah al-Shi'i, he is al-Husayn ibn Ahmad ibn Muhammad ibn Zakariya, known as al-Shi'i, Abu Abdullah, the one who carried out the mission of Ubaydullah al-Mahdi, the grandfather of the kings of Egypt. His story of the uprising in the West is well documented, and numerous accounts have been written about it. This Abu Abdullah al-Shi'i was originally from Yemen, from Sana'a. He was among the shrewd and experienced men who knew well what they were doing, for he entered Ifriqiya alone, without wealth or men, and he continued to strive until he conquered it and its kings, and its king, Abu Mudar Ziyadatullah, the last of the kings of Banu al-Aghlab, the Ghaliba, who fled from him to the eastern lands, and he died there. When he had established the foundations for Ubaydullah al-Mahdi, and this is what they called him, al-Mahdi, and secured the lands, al-Mahdi came from the east, but was unable to reach Abu Abdullah al-Shi'i. So al-Mahdi, he headed to Sijil Masa, and its ruler, Ilyasa, the last of the kings of Banu Midrar, became aware of him, so he arrested him and imprisoned him. Abu Abdullah went to him, freed him from imprisonment, and delegated the affairs of the kingdom to him. So Abu Abdullah al-Shi'i, who was ruling, he relinquished control over the lands that he ruled, and he handed it all over to Ubaydullah. Abu Abdullah al-Shi'i, he met Ubaydullah along with his brother Abu al-Abbas Ahmad, and his brother made him regret what he had done. He said to him, "You became the master of the lands and the one independent in their affairs. then you hand them over to another and remain among the followers. So he repeated these words to him. So Abu Abdullah, he regretted what he had done. He regretted that he secured the release from imprisonment of Ubaydullah and then handed power over to him. So he regretted that. So Al-Mahdi, Ubaydullah, sensed this from both of them, that they were plotting treachery. So he secretly sent someone to kill both of them in a single hour. And this occurred in the middle of Jumad al-Akhirah in the year 298 after Al-Hijrah in the city of Raqada. Now, as for Ubaydullah, his kunya was Abu Muhammad, and he was titled Al-Mahdi. He was the first among the Khawarij, Ubaydiyyah, Batiniyyah caliphs who overturned Islam. Someone sent me a question. Inshallah, I'll answer it later. Inshallah. Okay. So Ubaydullah al-Mahdi, he was the first of the Batiniya, Ubaydiyya, so-called Fatimiyya caliphs who overturned Islam. And they would abolish, they would proclaim the abolishment of fundamental rules and practices in the religion. They proclaimed rejection of the Sunnah and concealed the Ismaili creed that they held. They sent missionaries to mislead the mountain dwellers and the ignorant. Until this day, there are places that some of their missionaries reached and converted people to their Batiniya, Ismailiyya beliefs. There are people who live in the northern part, or like northern part of Pakistan, close to the mountain they call K2. So K2 is like Mount Everest. It's one of the highest mountains in the world. And tourists who go to that part of Pakistan, there's a specific valley which has unique tribes in that valley. And there is a maqam, a shrine in that valley, in which these people gather on an annual basis, and they do some sort of celebration there. Those people are Ismailiyya, Batiniya. There are some in Afghanistan as well. These people became Batiniya, Ismailiyya from the time of the missionaries that were sent out by the Ubaydiyyun in Egypt. This schemer, Ubaydullah al-Mahdi, claimed to be a descendant of Fatima from the lineage of Ja'far as-Sadiq radiyallahu anhuma, stating I am Ubaydullah ibn Muhammad ibn Abdullah ibn Maymun ibn Muhammad ibn Ismail ibn Ja'far ibn Muhammad, yani Muhammad al-Baqir, radiyallahu anhu. This is what he claimed. It was said that his name was not even Ubaydullah, but rather his name was Sa'id ibn Ahmad. And it was said that his father was a Jew. It was said that his father was a Jew. Al-Mu'ayyad al-Hamwi stated in his history, his book on history, that Ubaydullah's name was Sa'id ibn al-Husayn, and that his father al-Husayn came from Salmiya, a Jewish blacksmith's woman was described to him. Her husband had died. So Al-Husayn ibn Muhammad ibn Ahmad ibn Abdullah al-Qaddah married her. He had a son from the Jewish woman, whom Al-Husayn loved and educated. When he was dying, he entrusted him with his affairs, taught him the secrets of the Batiniyyah, and gave him money. So he sent missionaries on his behalf. Al-Dhahabi mentioned that in the year 270 after al-Hijrah, Ubaidullah's mission appeared in Yemen, and he had sent 2 missionaries, Abu al-Qasim ibn Hawshab al-Kufi and Abu al-Husayn, claiming that he was the son of Muhammad ibn Ismail ibn al-Sadiq Ja'far ibn Muhammad. Al-Dhahabi said that Ubaydullah was from the people of Salmiya, which is in Syria, possessing depth, cunning. When we say depth, some people are shallow. Isn't it the case? Donald Trump. Does Donald Trump possess depth, or is he a shallow person? No, he's a shallow person. So you have an idea of what we mean. He was cunning and he was deceptive, and he had lofty ambition. He proceeded according to the methodology of Ali ibn Muhammad, the Wretched, the leader of the Zengid, who destroyed Basra and other places. And inshallah, we'll speak more about the Zengid revolt later. And ruled for approximately 10 years. He destroyed lands and people, and was a trial, a fitna, upon the ummah. Historians have stated that he was a pretender. For instance, when Al-Mu'izz among them was asked by As-Sayyid As-Sayyid ibn Tabataba about his lineage, he said, "Tomorrow I will bring it out for you." Then he arose and threw out a heap of gold, then drew half his sword from its sheath. He said, "This is my lineage," and ordered them to plunder the gold, saying, "This is my nobility." Ibn al-Baqillani and other imams have written books, exposing the beliefs of the Ubaydiyyah. and the falseness of their lineage. So their lineage does not go back to Fatima, radiyallahu anha, or Ja'far as-Sadiq. Ubaydullah, he saw that what he sought of kingship would not appear in Iraq or Syria. So he first sent two demonic, cunning missionaries, the two brothers, Abu Abdullah al-Shi'i and his brother Ahmad Abu al-Abbas. One of them appeared in Yemen and the other in Africa. And each of them displayed aestheticism, yani zuhud, and piety, educated people's children, and instilled a longing for the Mahdi Imam. Abu Abdullah al-Shi'i used to say, the apparent meanings of verses and hadiths have hidden meanings that are like the kernel, while the apparent is like the husk. Yani, what that means is when you have the husk is the outer shell, like of wheat. You don't eat the husk usually. What is sought is the kernel, the actual grain of wheat. Just like if you get an orange, is what is sought the orange peel, or is it the fruit in which the peel contains? So he's saying that the words of the hadith, that what appears from them, those are just the peel, the outer shell. But really what you are seeking is what is hidden within the peel or the husk. This is what he's saying. He said, whoever stands upon knowledge of the hidden has risen above the level of religious obligations. So he was abolishing at-Taklif, accountability. He was abolishing religious obligations, saying that once you reach a certain level, you're not obligated to do anything. In fact, you can do whatever you want. No obligations and no sins. This is what he was saying. This is what they called towards. Abu Abdullah al-Shi'i possessed cunning, cleverness, tricks, and composure, and had skill and knowledge. They had 7 proclamations. The first for the common people, which is rejection of the Sunnah and the companions. Then the second proclamation for the elite. Then the third proclamation for those who were established. Then the fourth for those who continued for 2 years. Then the fifth for those who remained firm in the doctrine for 3 years. Then the seventh for those who persisted for 4 years. Then address with the 7th proclamation, which is their greatest law. Muhammad ibn Ishaq al-Nadim, he said, I read it. He read the 7 proclamations. He said, I read it and saw in it something tremendous regarding the permitting of forbidden things and the degradation of the religious laws and their adherents. It was manifest and widespread during the days of Mu'izz ad-Dawla, with missionaries scattered throughout the regions. Then it declined. During Ubaydullah's days, the Qaramita wreaked havoc in Bahrain, captured Hujjaj, pilgrims to Mecca, killed and enslaved them, violated the Haram of Mecca, and removed the black stone. Ubaidullah used to correspond with them and incite them. Then Abu Abdullah's affairs became established in the Maghrib, and multitudes of Berbers followed him. Then his brother joined him, and his gathering grew great until he fought the governor of the Maghrib and defeated him. When Ubaidullah heard of his missionary success, he traveled with his son, disguised as merchants, with spies upon them. However, they were captured, as we mentioned, by the governor of Alexandria, who was pleased with them and showed them his Shi'ism, his Tashayyuh. So they entered the Maghrib, and he let them go, and they went westward. The Emir of the Maghrib captured them and imprisoned them again, and they acknowledged nothing to him. Then he and Abu Abdullah al-Shi'i met, and Abu Abdullah was victorious and took control of the lands. He freed al-Mahdi from prison, kissed his hand, and said to his commanders, "This is our Imam." So the assembly pledged allegiance to him. He established the city al-Mahdiyyah in the year 308 after al-Hijrah, and no army marched against him due to the great distance and weakness of the Caliphate's affairs under al-Muqtadir's emirate. Yani this is 308. It is in this time that Imam At-Tahawi radiyallahu anhu is in Egypt. Al-Imam Abu al-Hasan al-Ashʿariyy is in Iraq. Al-Imam Abu Mansur al-Maturidi is in Samarkand. So this is a part of the environment in which they live. And this is just from one angle. There is still a lot more to cover. So Ubaidullah, he equipped his son from the Maghrib to take Egypt. But this was not accomplished for him. Abu al-Hasan al-Qadisi radiyallahu anhu, he said, those whom Ubaidullah and his sons killed numbered 4,000 in the house of slaughter under torture, scholars and worshippers, to turn them away from expressing satisfaction with the companions. They chose death. Abu Abdullah al-Shi'i gathered the elders of Kutama, which is one of the Berber tribes, to make them doubt Ubaidullah. He said the Imam was in Salmiya and had cohabitated with a Jewish perfumer known as Ubaid. He supported him and concealed his affair. Then Ubaid died, leaving 2 sons. So he converted them and their mother at Ubaidullah's hands, married her, and remained hidden. She bore Ubaidullah 2 sons. When I met with him, I asked him, So this is what Abu Abdullah al-Shi'i said. He said, when I met with him, I asked him, which of the two is my imam after you? He said, whoever comes to you of the two is your imam. He said, so I sent my brother to bring them both, but he found that their father had died along with one son. So he brought this one. He said, I feared that he might be the one, or he said, I fear that he might be one of Ubayd's sons. He said, what did you find objectionable about him? He said, the imam knows events before they occur. Wal-'iyadhu billah. He said, this one entered with two sons and designated the younger one for the matter after him. And he died after 20 days. That is, the child died after 20 days. If he had been an imam, he would have known of his death. They said, then what else? He said, the imam does not wear silk and gold, and this one has worn both. He should not have relations with anything except what he has verified. This one has had relations with the women of Ziyadatullah, that is the governor of the Maghrib. So Abu Abdullah al-Shi'i, he said, so I made Qutama doubt his matter. He wanted to cast doubt about the state, the status of Ubaydullah. He said, they said, what do you think? He said, seize him, then we will send someone to investigate the Imam's sons in truth. So they agreed on their plan. The chief of Qutama became afraid and confronted al-Mahdi, saying, we have doubted you, so bring a sign. Ubaydullah answered him with responses that his mind accepted. He said, you had certainty, and certainty is not removed except by certainty, not by doubt. The child did not die. He is your imam. The imams transfer themselves. This is what he said. He said the imam transfer themselves, and he has transferred to reform another direction. He said, I believe. But why do you wear silk? He said, I am the deputy of the Sharia. I make lawful for myself what I want. He said, all wealth belongs to me. Ziyadatullah was disobedient. As for Abu Abdullah al-Shi'i and his brother, they began to incite people against him. So he killed them both. Multitudes from Qutama rebelled against him, but he overcame them through cunning and killed them. The people of Tripoli, Libya, rebelled against him. So he equipped his son Al-Qa'im, who conquered it by force, and he conquered Barqa. Then he conquered Sicily and equipped Al-Qa'im twice to take Egypt, but each time he returned defeated. Ubaidullah's death was in the middle of Rabi' al-Awwal in the year 322 after al-Hijrah. Qadi Iyad, rahimahullah, he related in the biography of Abu Muhammad al-Kastirati or al-Qurani that he was asked about one whom Banu Ubayd, the followers of the Ubaydiyyah, forced to enter their call or be killed. So he said he should choose death and is not excused. Flight is obligatory because residing in a place where its people are required to suspend the religious laws is not permitted. Qadi Iyad said the scholars of Qayrawan agreed that the condition of Banu Ubayd is the condition of apostates and heretics. And inshallah, later in the book, more will be covered regarding how the scholars of Qayrawan viewed the Ubaydiyyah Fatimiyah. It was said that when Ubaydullah ruled the Maghrib, he would not openly express his doctrine except to the elite. When he became established, he greatly increased the killing, enslaved women, and coveted taking Egypt. The historian concludes, that is the end of the biography of, or brief biography of Ubaydullah al-Batini, la'natullahi alayhi. The historian concludes that the deep darkness the Muslims lived in during this period lasted until those who worked to achieve a balance of powers emerged, restoring some prestige to the Abbasid Caliphate, albeit nominally and morally. That occurred with the emergence of the Seljuks, who paved the way for the appearance of the two states that worked on unifying the Muslims and unifying their lands under one rule in facing the Byzantines on the northern frontiers and the hordes of Crusaders coming from Egypt, with persistent jihad to repel them from the lands of Islam. By this, we mean the emergence of the Nuriyah and the Ayyubiyya states in the east. The Nuriyah meaning those under the rule of Nuruddin Zenki, and Ayyubiyya meaning those under the rule of Salahuddin al-Ayyubi radiyallahu ta'ala anhuma. In the Islamic West, two states also emerged that had a prominent role in establishing the principles of Ahlus Sunnah wal Jama'ah in those lands. The pioneering role that the state of the Murabitun played in the West, and likewise the state of the Muwahhidun after them in unifying the lands of the Islamic West and undertaking the defense of al-Andalus before Muslim influence diminished therein, and they lost these lands under the strikes of the emerging European Christian kingdoms. However, what is notable is that the political climate and changes that occurred in the East and West did not negatively affect the scholarly movement of the striving Islamic scholars. And did you not wonder, how did Imam At-Tahawi survive under the rule of the Ubaydiyyun? How did Al-Imam al-Ashʿariyy survive under the rule and the control of Banu Buwayh? Rather, this intellectual movement and the striving of its scholars was a motivating and igniting force that kindled enthusiasm in the nation of Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam and pushed it forward on the path of scholarly progress, which led to the spread of the Ashďariyy creed in both East and West. We will confirm, insha'Allah, in the coming chapters how the notable figures of this creed supported the political march undertaken by the sultans of the Seljuks, Zengid and Ayyubid, and those who came after them in the East, and likewise what the Maliki scholars did in the West, in Africa, Qayrawan, Fas, and al-Andalus, without their activity being stopped by the pressures of the Ubaydiyyun rule, as well as the circumstances of the emergence of both the Murabitun and the Muwahhidun states, which never separated from the scholarly movement in spreading the Ashďariyy creed and the school of Imam Malik radiyallahu ta'ala anhu wa ardah. Wallahu subhanahu wa ta'ala a'lam wa ahkam, and Allah knows best. This was essentially an introduction to the Asha'ira in the East. And as we stated, we're going to start with the era of the companions. And cover some of the Islamic conquests during their time. And among the most famous conquests of that time, the era of the companions, is the battle of al-Qadisiyah, which, if you are not familiar with the details, although we didn't include every detail, but I think we included enough. The companions, radiyallahu anhum, were amazing. It is, considering the types of people, let me speak about myself. Considering the type of person that I am, and the type of people that I usually encounter, it's hard to imagine that such people actually existed. It is hard to imagine. I'm speaking relative to what we are used to. That's clear.
لا يشبه الله البشر كلا وليس له صور لا يشبه الله البشر كلا وليس له صور وليس جسما فالحضر سبحانه رب عظيم وليس جسما فالحضر سبحانه رب عظيم سبحانه